Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. I just got in from DC yesterday. The bars are opening early today so people can watch Comey. So thanks for not being drunk and instead listening to me talk about Indivisible. If anything big happens, though, shout it out. I'm Ezra Levin. I'm co-executive director of Indivisible, which is crazy. But I'm here because I wrote a Google Doc and had a tweet storm, actually. So it's really that combination that made it happen, I think. But it wasn't just me. There was this large group of people right after the election who were coming together in their living rooms on Facebook groups, trying to figure out what can we do in this brave new world? What are we? How can we actually effectively resist the Trump administration's agenda? And Leah Greenberg, my wife, and I were former congressional staffers. Don't hold that against us. We got together with a few other staffers and said, hey, it's clear that there's a ton of energy out there. It's also clear that Congress is a black box. It's unclear exactly how a petition or a call or any individual action actually connects to this huge goal of resisting the Trump administration's agenda. These slides are random, by the way, so don't think that they're connected to what I'm saying. But so we put it out in a Google Doc. We called it Indivisible for a specific reason, and it was that we thought that every single facet of the progressive ecosystem was under attack. That if you are somebody who's in favor of reproductive rights, that's great, but you got to stand up when the dreamers are under attack. And if you're somebody who's out there for the environment, that's good too, but you got to stand up when the progressive tax code's under attack. That the only way we will win is if we treat an attack on one like an attack on all. If we stand indivisible together, we do have a chance. The alternative is to wait your turn, stand up for your issue, and lose. Now, we heard in DC at the time, that wasn't what people were saying. People were saying, even in progressive communities, that we just needed to cut deals. That's the place we were in, that Republicans had the House, Republicans had the Senate, we had Trump, they were going to come in and do big things. And we were terrified about that. So that's why we put the Google Doc out. And we had thought when we put the Google Doc out that maybe it would be read 6 months from now, we'd hear from somebody and they say, hey, I asked my member of Congress a question and really gave it to them, thanks for doing it. That's not what happened, and we were shocked. Within an hour or two of the Google Doc going up, it started crashing, people couldn't download or print it, so we put up a website, and the most amazing thing happened, the really key thing that happened. It's not that, we saw a lot of tweets about it, it's not that just people were joining Facebook groups about it, it's that people were forming physical groups in their own communities. And so what you see behind me now is just a series, very quickly moving slides, of people taking action in their own communities. There are now about 6,000 Indivisible groups spread throughout the country. Which is amazing, yeah. And 6,000 is a big number. What's amazing to us is that it's not just New York or the West Coast. It's not just city centers. There are an average of 13 Indivisible groups in every single congressional district in the country. That means Indivisible East Tennessee and Indivisible Middle Tennessee and Indivisible Auburn, Alabama and Indivisible Minnesota. These are groups of folks, largely people who are relatively new to politics. They're school teachers and nurses and IT technicians who, before the election, weren't super active. But they got active. What they decided to do was they were going to take control of their home turf and practice local defensive congressional advocacy, taking a page out of the Tea Party's playbook, erasing the racism and violence, but using that smart strategy and tactic that you, as an individual constituent, have power and can indeed affect the legislative process, not just during elections, but during the legislative process. So that's what these groups started doing. And then we found ourselves in this really unexpected position, because in the Google Doc, we said very explicitly, we're not professional organizers, we have our own jobs, they don't know about this, don't tell them, please. And we are not starting an organization. The last thing progressive space needs is yet another nonprofit. And then we started a nonprofit in January. And the reason why we did was actually a shift from what we were putting out in the guide. So it's worth noting, and this is, I think, the title of the speech, the organizing versus mobilizing. Are folks familiar with this distinction? It was new to me, this mobilizing versus organizing distinction. We've been talking now since we started the organization with Marshall Gans. He's this towering figure in social movement space. He was Cesar Chavez's organizing director for 18 years. He's now a professor of social change at Harvard. And he talks about this distinction, where Mobilizing is where you typically, it's what you see in a campaign field program for a ballot initiative or a candidate. You get a group of people together and you get them to do something. You try to get them to vote for the ballot initiative or vote for the candidate. And once they do that, that's great. Maybe you succeed, maybe you don't, but it's over after that. The energy dissipates. And that's all well and good if you're a candidate, because if you get into office, then you can just go and do whatever you want. That's what's happening in Congress right now. But it doesn't work for affecting change over the long haul. It doesn't work to affect the kind of change we want to see. Organizing, in contrast, is very, very different. Organizing is about building local power. It's about building local leadership. And the unit of activism from Indivisible's standpoint for this reason is not the individual. It's actually the local group. That's why these groups are so important. These groups develop their own leadership. They develop their own local power, and it means that one group leader can start leading the group, and a couple months later, maybe they have a kid, or they move, or they get a new job. Their activism wanes, but the group doesn't die. The group sustains itself through development of this local leadership. And so the reason why we started Indivisible Project, the organization, is yes, we're concerned about the Trump administration's agenda. Yes, we want to see Congress change and the rest of the political establishment change. But fundamentally, what we're trying to do is build up the power of these local groups. So what does that mean? What is the actual goal, or what are we doing with this organization? It means the heart and soul of what we are doing is building up an organizing team. Right now, we have 45 Indivisible groups in Darrell Ice's district, for instance, in California. We have one organizer for the entire state of California and Hawaii combined. So if we're talking about providing some kind of significant support to groups, it means actually building up an organization to try to provide that support. What it does not mean is us doing it all on our own. So there are a ton of great organizations, both that have been around for a long time doing racial justice, community organizing on the ground, or new organizations that have emerged after the election, and we're trying to work together because we're facing an existential threat right now. And the answer cannot be, you're on my list or I don't talk to you. It's got to be, we come together and stand indivisible, or whatever you want to say, in order to fight back against what we're seen as threats today. So the heart and soul of what we're doing is this field team, which is trying to provide connectivity between the 6,000 groups, the 990 in California and the 230 in Washington State, help provide support in the form of sharing best practices and providing trainings. We do communications as well, and this isn't just about connecting them to press and doing our own branding, but it's really this fundamental building a sense of shared identity and shared purpose, which we think is crucial for maintaining the strength of this movement, because it can't just be that Indivisible Roanoke goes and knocks on their door and they feel like that's all it is. They've got to feel like they're part of a nationwide movement. And so what we've started seeing is groups do exactly that they're standing up for each other. Dale Ice was actually at a fundraiser in Florida a few weeks ago, and the Indivisible Brandenburg, I think, in Florida, kayaked out to the waterfront fundraiser and protested, demanding that he go back to his district and hold a town hall for his constituents, for his Indivisible group in San Diego, or outside San Diego. And he came out to them and committed to it. So this kind of community building, not just at the local level, but at the national level, we think is crucial for keeping going. Because, look, things are going to be really tough. We are already suffering losses. We are already seeing a lot of damage getting done. We're seeing, just today, basic tenets of American democracy under threat. And that's hard to keep going when you're a nurse or a school teacher or an IT technician or somebody who's doing this in their free time. But if you feel like you're part of this nationwide movement that is real and growing, then you're more likely to continue going. But this gets to two other parts of the organization, which I really view as mirror images of each other. And it gets to the mobilizing part, because just because you're doing organizing doesn't mean that you don't also try to mobilize people. And it's the policy team and the political team. So we have a policy team that is demystifying Congress. That's their goal. They say, yeah, here's what your member of Congress is saying, but here's how you can actually have impact. Here's what the hearing is, here's what the vote is. Your senator may be saying they oppose it, but this is what withholding consent looks like, or this is what filibustering can actually do to the process. That's policy. And what we've seen so far is in the first several months of this administration, there has not been a single significant piece of legislation passed by this president. That is shocking. That is absolutely shocking. Again, Republicans have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They've been promising, for instance, with the Affordable Care Act, repeal for 7 years. They've done it dozens of times, and they haven't yet even passed it through the Senate. This is crazy. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it is the direct result of people across the country coming together and telling their senators, sometimes, and I'm from Texas, so I like seeing this, in Arkansas with thick Southern accents, do not repeal the Affordable Care Act, otherwise I'll be dead or bankrupt. This is having an impact, and it's having an impact not in 2018, it's having an impact right now. But that's not the only way we can have impact, and that's why we have a political team. Which is brand new. It's only a couple or 3 weeks old, but the political team is looking at another way that we can affect change, which is if you don't like who the folks are making the decisions in Washington and they're not listening to you, they're not holding town halls, you got to figure out how to change them. That's a key part of what we'll be doing over the coming weeks and months is figuring out how to support the local groups to get out and change who their members of Congress are, who their elected officials are. And I just want to say one more thing because I only have 34 seconds. And that's, we started this as being very focused on Congress. And that's where our expertise is. I haven't done municipal policy or state policy, but what we've seen from the local groups is while they started there too, that's not where they stopped. What we see the local groups now doing is engaging in a whole bunch of type of civic activities. They're getting involved in elections, they're getting involved in city-level policy, they're getting involved in state and legislature advocacy. They're building up in their Indivisible groups this foundational progressive infrastructure that they just haven't had before. And so what we hope to do is work with them going forward to not just resist the Trump administration's agenda and not just elect the candidates we want to see, but actually drive us towards the progressive, bold vision for the future that we want to see. And that all is going to flow out of this community of strong local groups. So thanks for listening.